It is time to build Citlali today. Normally, I would just go for DPS build because I have a problem with turning everyone into DPSs. But I think I'm going to focus mainly on her shield today because that is her big part of her kit, her main thing. First, though, we need to get her up to level 90, which is just going to require a couple more of these and these. We also need to get her weapon up to level 90, but I'm not sure if we want to use Mapper for the time being, so I'll deal with that. And then we also have talents, which for the time being, I'm just going to get to level 2, so I don't need the lowest grade drops. So first, let's go farm these two, get her up to level 90. Then I'll probably look at some guides to understand what she does. So then I can hopefully build her somewhat correctly. But I think from just reading her talents, you just basically want to put EM on her if you want stronger shields. Seems like her burst just does damage. So I don't think we'd really need to focus on that if we're just building a shielder build, but I will probably build her as a DPS at some point, so I might have a look at her burst, at least just level it up a bit, because as long as we can get her sitting at a good amount of EM, we should just be able to focus then on like DPS stats. I mean, that's how I've run other shielders, and I think I could do a similar thing with Citlali. Obviously, as I said, I have no clue, so I'll need to look at some guides and figure out what I need to do. So while I'm farming the Saurians and the local specialties, let me have a look at a guide and try to figure out how we build Granny here. Okay, so I have done all of the farming I need to do. We can now get lovely Granny Citlali up to level 90, hopefully. Yes, good, we have the resources. There we go. So as I was doing that, I also looked at some guides. And first things first, we definitely want to use Sacrificial. It will be a little bit better than Mapper. So let me hopefully ascend that up to level 90. That will give her a bunch of EM, which is needed for her shield. And her something, Ascension 2 or Ascension, yes, Ascension 2. That also scales off of EM. Now, before we get around to dealing with the artifact situation, because that will slightly depend on teams, we need to deal with said teams. The problem with Citlali is that she mainly works in melt teams. That's her main kit if you're playing her as a support, which means you want a on-field pyro DPS. And if we look through our list of supports here, we do not have a on-field pyro DPS because we have stopped counting Shangling as a support, which basically just leaves us with either Toma, which is not a great option. We have Chevreuse, who wants Overload, so it's also not a good option. Xinyan and Bennett. Bennett is a support, so he doesn't work, which basically just leaves us with Xinyan, which isn't the most optimal character, because she's not the greatest. However, I have built mine to do DPS stuff, so it could work. I also do have a team that I really would like to try out, and I reckon would work really, really well with Xinyan and Citlali, and that would be something along the lines of Xinyan, Benny Boy, C6 Bennett for Pyro Infusion, Citlali, and then when we get her, Xianyun, which can do good damage because I've hit like 80k I think on my main account doing Vaporize. In the meantime though, we don't have a lot of options. We can throw Shalonen on the team, call it a day, throw Farina on the team, and also, again, call it a day. But there's not too much else as Citlali doesn't really do anything for any other teams. She can work with Nouvelette. However, we obviously cannot use Nouvelette, and we also don't really have any other Hydro DPSs. The closest we'd have is a Farina or possibly my Siege Queen, which is built as a bit of a burst DPS. Still, not great options. Which basically just leaves us with this team would probably be our best option. For this team, I would swap out Farina with Shalonen. Obviously though, we're running Xinyan as the DPS, so it's not going to go too great. We've got two artifact options for Citlali. You either have Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, or you could possibly run Instructor's Set, which could work, gives EM to your team. This one is much better. However, Shalonen already has that, and you don't really want two of them on the same team. So if that's the case, Shalonen could get swapped to Archaic Petra, which would also work pretty decently. We're just lacking any Archaic pieces, so we need to farm them. First, however, let's have a look at Xinyan and see what I can do in terms of her build. Seeing as she's going to be a on-field pyro DPS, we probably want like a Crimson Witch, possibly. Yeah, I think that'd work. She's currently running Mailed Flower, which is not what we want her on. We'd want her on Earth Shaker, which we are able to get up to level 80. Hopefully level 90, but we will see. Yeah, no, we will not be able to get up to level 90 unless this is open today. which it is not. Okay, so it turns out we have literally nothing in terms of decent crimson pieces. Well, we do have okay enough circlet. It's not great, but it works. The feather is decent. The flower is decent. We don't have any good off-piece pyro damage goblets, and we don't have a single decent attack stands. So for the time being, I guess we will run her on a two-piece. There we go, two-piece Crimson Witch, two-piece Gladiators. It puts her at a whopping 42,167 with over 1,000 defense, 2,000 attack, 100 EM, which is much, much lower than I would have liked. So just because of that, and also I don't want to swap Shalonen onto Archaic Petra because I don't have any, I am going to run Citlali on Instructors for the time being. It's not the most optimal as we are losing out on the level 20 max levels for artifacts, but it will work enough for now. I also do need to raise a set of Instructors for other characters, so it works. We mainly just want her on EM and ER, maybe some offensive stats if we can get them. Although her own personal damage is decent, it's nothing groundbreaking, so I'm not going to focus on it too heavily for the time being until I actually build a DPS Citlali, which is definitely going to happen. Until then, we're just going for EM, trying to get a strong shield, and that's about it. And now we, unfortunately, do not have any EM pieces, except for a 3-star, which I'd really not like to use. I'd really much rather use a 4-star piece, but yeah, it's not looking like that's going to be an option, so 3-star piece it is, I guess. And then we just run a off-piece EM on the circlet. Well, it's definitely not the best set you've ever seen, but it puts her at 737 EM. And having her on Instructor will bring Xinyan up to 220, I think? Yes, 220 EM, which is good enough for now. Well, that just leaves her talents, which I'm going to focus on her skill and her burst. We don't need to touch her normal attack because it is useless unless I want to build DPS, which is not something I want to do right now. So we'll just get these two up to 6. Now we do need Alakinos drops. I don't think I'll be able to craft any of them. Ooh, never mind. We can. We can craft 2 of them. So that will mean that we can get both up to 7 or this one up to 8, which is what I'm going to do because I will deal with the burst when I build her as a DPS because that's where it's more important. So there we go. It's good enough for now. 286 running Instructors with the Sacrificial Fragments level 90, C0. Yeah, there's some stats. They're not the greatest, but it's something. So don't expect anything, but let's see how this team does. She is a shielder, so shielding is her main focus. As long as she has a strong enough shield, just throw her in really any team and she will work. But she does have the ability to buff characters, so you would want to use that if possible. As for rotations, I don't know, but I'd assume we do something along the lines of this, possibly. That did 5k, I think. On a melt, we're doing 14k. That's not horrible. Once you get a Xian Yun, then I imagine it will go a bit higher. But until then, I'm not expecting too much. Was that 30k from Burst? I think it was. So it's not great. I'll give it that much. There's not a ton of damage happening. That is partly because Xinyan is not built and needs better artifacts. But it is also the fact that we are using Xinyan, who doesn't do damage. Now, while we're here, I do want to do another test with Masanori, because he can do some pretty hard hits. So I would like to see how Citlali's shield handles his attacks. There is 1 hit. We have now got it up to the stage 2 where it does damage. And 2 hits it took to break, which isn't bad. But it is a decent shield. I think it's like in between a Layla and a Zhongli. It's not as strong as Zhongli's, but it is slightly stronger than Layla's, I think. However, the damage is severely lacking, which you can help buff from this. After we trigger a frozen or melt reaction, the pyro and hydro res of opponents affected by said reaction is decreased by 20%, which is solid. And then this one, I think, is just her own personal damage during her elemental skill. His Papa's damage is increased by 90% of her EM. And then during her elemental burst, the damage is increased by 1,200% of Citlali's elemental mastery. Damn, that's a large number. So I'm basically just waiting on a Xianyun to hopefully be able to do plunging attack with Xinyan, and that might help us do more damage, but I doubt it. It's always hard for me to feel happy with building a support character because I can't just look at damage numbers. I can look at a shield and go, yeah, strong shield, but building support characters is always kind of hard because you can't tell how much they're doing, and it's not as easy as a DPS character. But she did increase our Xinyan's damage, maybe, I think. I don't remember what our DPS Xinyan was doing. I'll deal with Xinyan's weapon when we get Xianyun, get her fully maxed out then. And then in that team, we'd swap Shalonen out for Xianyun, and we put Citlali on Scroll of Cinder City. Then we'll see what happens there. But until then, I think I'm going to leave it here. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked this video, go check out my Xinyan DPS video to see how the old team compared. And with that being said, I'll see you next time. Good. Bye.